to be true. Gene Hart is at Ovations in the Spectrum, and I believe, Gene, you can hear me okay?
Very well, Bill.
Hey, fine. Glad to have you with us, Gene. Gene, you have probably heard, and I don't know whether you have or not, but would you like to comment on the unconfirmed Associated Press report, which I have just passed along in that context, that Eric Lindros is going to be awarded to the Flyers?
Well, let me put it in this context, Bill. This is the most important decision involving a player, I think, in the history of this league, because it's going to determine the future of the league, of the Patrick division as it stands, and either the future of the Philadelphia Flyers or the New York Rangers. That's how important I think it is, and particularly for Philadelphia, as we've talked so often in the past, with the new building and extra seats and super boxes, and the Flyers trying to get out of the cellar for the first time in 3 years. I think it's that big a decision. But, Bill, I thought this. The reason for the length of the hearings might have been this. You had two protagonists, Philadelphia saying we had a deal, Quebec said we did not have a deal. So I think the arbiter had to go along the way to find out where the credence lied. And the more people and more organizations with whom he discussed this issue, he might have got a general trend. Perhaps Quebec's dealing showed that there was an unethical or greedy behavior that might have led the Philadelphia Flyers to believe and, in a sense, have a deal. I guess you wanted to make sure that you covered all avenues because of the importance of where Eric Lindros finally wears his jersey in the NHL.
Let me interrupt you for a second and ask you, is there any reaction where you are in Ovations at the Spectrum to what I have classified as the unconfirmed report from AP?
Well, it's circulated, but there hasn't been any reaction because this has been so much of a crapshoot. Oh, they'll get him. No, they don't get him. They don't have a chance. Yes, they do. I think everyone's taking anything that they hear now with a grain of salt until Mr. Berluzzi's on the phone or somebody comes in and said, is it a set? We've heard, and apparently it's been true, that the teams were notified well before the 11 o'clock deadline, I guess in order that they could arrange a press release or at least inform players if they intended upon their press conference to announce who was involved. Roger Gottlieb right now is on the podium, sans microphone, talking to the gathered press. And I'll tell you, it's an elite of the press group. Name someone in the Philadelphia area, in the Delaware Valley, and he or she are here this morning. That's how big it is. And I think what Roger was saying, and just forget the rumors, forget what you've heard, wait until the phone call goes on from Toronto. I heard the music in the background, Bill, and I asked the Ovations if they couldn't turn it off, and they said, well, no, that's the conference phone tone from Toronto.
Yeah, it is.
And so I said, well, okay, so that's what you hear in the background. I see John Bogan, who shows no facial expression one way or another, but you'd have to assume by now that the teams involved know. The Rangers have announced they would not have a press conference. Neil Smith is in North Carolina and Hilton Head for the American Hockey League meetings. And now the Flyers party, that small group of John Bogan, who's the president of communications, and assistant to Jay Snyder, and the Flyers PR director, Roger Gottlieb, have left. And I think they just informed the press saying whether there'd be a delay or not. But
in keeping with the long tradition of telephone press conferences and everything, there is a delay. It is now 11:04, and we're a little late getting started by Mr. Bertuzzi in Toronto.
I wonder what would happen, Bill, and you know, nothing is strange in the NHL. If he came on, he says, after looking at this and studying it for a week, I don't know who's right or wrong, so I'm going to give it to another lawyer from Ottawa, and we're going to start Monday and try it all over again.
If our unconfirmed report is true, and if the Flyers have won this thing and are going to get Eric Lindros, the question was raised in the first hour here today. If this report is true, does this in effect say that the Quebec Nordiques acted unethically, and if so, would they be subject to some disciplinary action, and who's going to hand down the disciplinary action?
Well, I think it would be an indictment of the manner in which they conducted themselves, and perhaps, Bill, the punishment would be that they did not get the trade that later on they said they had with the New York Rangers. I thought myself, and it isn't a lawyer's view, that had the Rangers gotten the rights, it would have seemed to be an unfair justice to give a team a reward for dealing as they did unethically.
On the day of the draft, Gene, and I'm sure you've thought about this a great deal, on the day of the draft, and much has been made about this on the talk shows, The teams went right on with the draft as if nothing was going wrong. At about somewhere around 1 o'clock, the Flyers picked Ryan Sittler. The Flyers figuring, I guess, that to not make a selection would really be damaging if their appeal was rejected. Does that make sense?
Yes. Suppose you skip your 7th. Say, no, that was part of the deal, and you skip your 15th. You lose those 2 draft picks if you're not right. Bill, several years ago, if you recall, the St. Louis Blues, there was some talk about them moving to Saskatoon. And in the interim, they drafted no people in that year, and they never went. So the Blues, in an error in judgment, lost out a whole year of the draft and set them back 5 years in their growth plan. And I think with the confusion, apparently the number 4 pick, which was Quebec's, was involved in the trade with Philadelphia. When Quebec moved to the podium, the Flyers were going to say, no, wait a minute, that's our pick, and went immediately to John Ziegler. And that's where they made their protest, but the draft was allowed to continue. Bill, I said this earlier, perhaps all of this could have been solved if Quebec were the culprit. That would make both Philadelphia and the Rangers, and perhaps everyone else involved, innocent bystanders. What the league president, had he been strong, and I wonder if I broach you with this, how you would react. When all this brouhaha broke and he discussed with the participant parties on late Saturday evening, he'd have said to an announcement to the public that there seems to be some ethical or some confusion in the manner in which Eric Lindros' rights were dealt. So as the president of the National Hockey League, I'm going to negate all of the deals, but with the Rangers and the Flyers as the final participants, I'm going to order the management of both teams to turn in to me tomorrow in my room at Montreal's hotel at 12 noon a last and final sealed bid offer for the rights to Eric Lindros. When I have both envelopes, I will give copies to the Quebec Nordiques and demand that by 3 o'clock they make their selection. This, I feel, would give both teams a fair and last chance shot at this particular player's talents, and that's it, and thank you very much.
That to me, Gene, and you're probably going to dislike me for saying this, but that to me drips of so much logic that it would be untypical of the NHL. That's just too sensible. Okay. That's just too sensible. I thought that would be a terrific way of doing it, but that's just too sensible.
Yeah. Roger Gottlieb's talking, and he's telling everyone there has to be absolute silence when we have this conference call from Toronto, so they don't get feedback and the like. And well,
apparently we're getting closer to it. You know, you made the comment this is the biggest deal probably in the history of the National Hockey League, and when you said that, I was going through my mind, you know, this might be, Gene, the biggest trade ever made in the history of any league, involving more money for any than a team has ever paid for any player.
I mean, the only player I can think of similar note coming into professional sports was Elway in Baltimore. But certainly the money and the furor was not as great as this created, particularly in Canada, where it's the national game.
Gene, let me ask you this. You've been around this game a lot. Your judgment of hockey players is a lot better than mine. And there's one word in this whole thing that scares me, and that word is potential. When the Gretzky deal was made, you were dealing for not only a proven player, but a proven superstar. This deal, you're dealing for a potential. Doesn't that word scare you a little bit?
Well, let me give you the last example. Pittsburgh, by the very nature of their organization, were a terrible franchise through most of its history. So bad that by the 80s they hit rock bottom. They were drawing 8,000 and 9,000 people to weekend games. Had a terrible team, a terrible front office, a terrible management, and terrible coach. And because of that, they were awarded the number 1 pick called Mario Lemieux, a potential star. They drafted him, and they didn't begin from ground zero, Bill. They began from the basement with an awful club surrounding him. But then with his presence as an anchor, within 2 years, although they did not make the playoffs, they began selling out the Pittsburgh Civic Arena and have every game in the last 7 years. And within 6 years, he became a dominant force in the National Hockey League. His team now has won back-to-back Stanley Cups, and that's how I point to Eric Lindros coming here with that kind of potential.
Good afternoon. All
here we go.
Now on the conference
all right, here we go.
Here we go.
You may begin your conference.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We are joined by approximately 90 media across North America on this conference call. As well, I am in Chicago with President-elect Gil Stein, And in Toronto, Larry Bertuzzi, the league's arbitrator in this matter, is joined by our communications staff. Just a word for a moment on the process here. Mr. Stein will make a short opening statement. I will then turn the call over to Mr. Bertuzzi, who will read his decision in its entirety. That will last approximately 20 minutes. At the conclusion of the reading of Mr. Bertuzzi's decision, I will come back on the line and we'll coordinate a question and answer period session with Mr. Stein. So we will deal with questions for Mr. Stein first, as he has a flight to catch to Minnesota, and we will be able to take about 15 or 20 minutes to do that. After that, I will turn matters over for a question and answer period with Mr. Bertuzzi in Toronto, and Susan Elliott of the communications group will moderate that. We will deal in this order with the questions. We will deal with the three markets involved in this matter, the newspaper and radio affiliates from those markets first. I will ask if there are any questions, and I will identify the markets. And we will do that for Mr. Stein, and then in turn we will do the same process for Mr. Bertuzzi. So at this point, I will turn things over to Mr. Stein. Just before I do that, a quick note: if you do get cut off from the call, if you can call 301-816-4500, and you will be reconnected to the call. Thanks very much. Gil Stein is now with you.
Good morning. This is Gil Stein. I just wanted to say that in all my years as a litigation lawyer, I have never seen a matter as complex and important as this determined with such alacrity, without sacrificing due process for any of the parties involved. On behalf of the League and the parties, I wish to express our thanks to Mr. Bertuzzi. That's all I have to say right now.
I will turn things over to arbitrator Larry Bertuzzi, who will read his decision in its entirety. Mr. Bertuzzi.
Gentlemen, this is the complete text of the decision, which I have released to the parties some 30 minutes ago. This is an arbitration pursuant to Article 6.3b of the NHL Constitution to resolve a dispute between member clubs over the contracts or for the services of players. In the agreed terms of reference signed by the three clubs in question, the issue before me is whether Philadelphia made an enforceable deal with Quebec with respect to Eric Lindros, whom I will refer hereafter to as Lindros, and other consideration, and I am empowered to resolve the dispute as to the services of all players and draft choices in connection therewith. Hearings in this matter were held in Montreal commencing on June 22 and continuing up to and including June 27, 1992, at which hearings the parties were given full opportunity to call evidence, cross-examine witnesses, and make submissions and arguments. A number of witnesses testified under oath, including Jay Snyder, Marcel Aubu, hereafter called Aubu, and Stanley Jaffe, hereafter called Jaffe. The evidence. By way of introduction, let me say that I heard 5 days of evidence from 11 witnesses on what transpired in Quebec's negotiations with Philadelphia, New York, and other clubs concerning Lindros. I have carefully reviewed all of the evidence, and I find the facts to be as follows. Background. This matter has its genesis at the NHL draft in 1991, when Quebec drafted Lindros as its first pick in the hope that he would represent the future of the Quebec franchise. Aubu candidly admitted that he expected signing Lindros might be a problem, but was prepared to make every effort to accomplish that task for the good of the Quebec franchise. He continued in such efforts for almost a full, difficult year, until reluctantly deciding that the signing of Lindros could not be accomplished by Quebec. At that point, it was decided to trade Lindros' right to protect the interests of the Quebec franchise. Aubu decided on a strategy which was to get the best possible deal for his franchise. It involved, in his words, getting the maximum offers from the largest possible number of clubs, getting them to increase those offers at various steps of the negotiating process, and ultimately to make a deal. It was his view that everyone in the NHL knew this, and that the 1992 draft was a natural deadline for the process. Aubu let it be known that Quebec was expecting to get a maximum return to strengthen its franchise, and that the offers should cover three components. That is, players, draft picks, and cash. However, there were obstacles. Many of the bidding teams came to the bargaining process with conditions of their own, relating to Lindros reporting and signing a standard player contract, confidentiality requirements, and, in some cases, procedural conditions under which they were prepared to negotiate with Quebec. In the face of the knowledge that Lindros had refused to report to two teams in the OHL and the NHL, there was reluctance on the part of bidding clubs to negotiate anything more than a conditional deal for Lindros' rights. In this latter regard, a number of clubs sought Aubu's permission to speak with Lindros before negotiating with Quebec. I heard from Philadelphia and at least one other team that Aubu's position was that such permission to speak with Lindros would not be granted until we had a deal. With so many parties, so many components, so many conditions, and with the time constraints and the publicity surrounding the process, it is not surprising that this affair ended up the way it did. Aubu's strategy worked very well. He used his considerable skills as a negotiator to extract from his fellow club owners and general managers the best they had to offer in a determined attempt to help the Quebec Nordique now and for many years to come. There was little doubt that the combination of Aubu's ground rules, other teams' desire to obtain the rights to Lindros, and their wish to prevent a divisional rival from obtaining those rights caused these negotiations to escalate as Aubu had hoped. So much so that less than 24 hours before the draft test deadline, no less than 8 clubs were serious contenders. It is important at this point to emphasize that this is not a dispute over whether an oral deal has more or less weight in the NHL than one which possesses all the trappings of a legal document. It is simply a determination of whether two clubs made a deal in the way clubs in the NHL have been making deals for 75 years. I wish to emphasize that no new standard will be created with this decision. That was simply not an issue between the three clubs in this dispute. Let me begin by dealing with the New York-Quebec agreement. It is common ground between them that they have made an arrangement with respect to Lindros' services or rights, and there is no dispute between those clubs as to its terms. It is also common ground that this deal was concluded at approximately 11:50 a.m. on Saturday, June 20, during a telephone conversation between Aubu in Montreal and Jaffe in New York. Although certain of the conditional aspects alluded to earlier had been committed to a written agreement 3 weeks earlier, there was no written agreement between Aubu and Jaffe setting out the essential components of the ultimate agreement at the time when they both agreed they made a binding deal. Nor, of course, it being a phone call, was there a handshake. These dealings between Aubu and Jaffe were consistent with other evidence I heard regarding how deals are made in the National Hockey League. It appears that some of the league's larger trades have been consummated over the phone, in a press box, or in a restaurant. This is no doubt similar to the practices found in other major professional sports or the corporate world. One further note must be made on the New York-Quebec deal. Neil Smith negotiated the player and draft pick component with Pierre Paget and Obu. And Obu negotiated the money component with Jaffe by phone. I find that Messrs. Jaffe and Smith operated in a manner which is fair and proper and above criticism. During Jaffe's 3 telephone conversations with Obu on Saturday morning, there is no indication he had any knowledge of Quebec's dealings with Philadelphia, save the fact that Philadelphia was also a bidder and had a draft choice in its offer. The 11:50 a.m. telephone conversation with Obu was not New York one-upping the Philadelphia terms, but merely a continuation and culmination of earlier telephone negotiations between Obu and Jaffe. There is no evidence to suggest Jaffe ever knew what the complete Philadelphia terms were. Similarly, it must be said that in dealing with New York, as with other teams, Obu was motivated by his determination to get the best possible hockey deal for his club and its fans. Now I turn to the Philadelphia-Quebec dealers. Like other teams in the bidding, Philadelphia was not prepared to risk players, draft choices, and cash on the mere chance Lindros would sign an acceptable contract and report. This was also complicated by unsubstantiated rumors which had surfaced in the league over the years that Philadelphia was not a place where Lindros would play. In view of this, Philadelphia did 2 things. First, it asked Obu early and often for an opportunity to speak to Lindros to determine his attitude about reporting to Philadelphia. Obu's response was quite clear: not until we have a deal. This is consistent with the position he took with at least one other club which made a similar request. Obu was concerned that to do otherwise would create a free-for-all and would detract from the heated competition he was intent on creating. Secondly, Philadelphia insisted that any deal was subject to a condition that Lindros sign a contract with it. Jay Snyder's discussions with Obu indicated Philadelphia would have a short period of time, a matter of days, to satisfy this condition. This, too, was consistent with the position of other bidding clubs. As stated, New York went so far as to put this condition in a signed written agreement 3 weeks earlier. Philadelphia did not have the condition in writing, but I find that to be of no consequence, as Philadelphia and Quebec operated on that clear understanding. The final negotiation. The facts can be summarized as follows. 1. Negotiations took place between Philadelphia and Quebec for a number of days before Friday, June 19, with discussions on all 3 components of a possible deal. At approximately 5:30 p.m. on Friday, Obu met with Jay Snyder to try to convince him to improve the player and draft pick components from their earlier discussions. At approximately 8:30 p.m. on Friday, Philadelphia made an offer, which the parties knew to be Exhibit P1, which altered all 3 components of their position, including reducing the money. Both Philadelphia and Obu learned Friday from Lindros' agent that there may be impediments to Lindros signing an acceptable contract with any club. Obu also learned of the agent's position that he would much prefer that the deal not be with Philadelphia. Obu made a telephone appeal to Ed Snyder, Philadelphia's majority owner in Los Angeles, to attempt to have the money brought back to its earlier level. It was left that Obu should work with Jay Snyder on the players and draft picks, and Ed Snyder would speak to Jay Snyder regarding the money. At approximately 1 a.m. on Saturday, June 20, Obu delivered a paper, which we refer to as Exhibit P2, to to Jay Snyder, setting out O'Bru's position on players, draft picks, and cash, and telling him, this is the deal. Saturday morning, Jay Snyder, and hereafter all references to Snyder will be to Jay, phoned O'Bru to attempt to discuss various elements of the player and draft pick components, and alternatives on the cash element. Snyder also repeated his request to speak to the Lindros family regarding Lindros' preparedness to report to Philadelphia, but this was refused by O'Bru. At approximately 10:30 a.m., Snyder phoned O'Bru and accepted all the terms which were set out in the paper Exhibit P2, which O'Bru had presented to him at 1 a.m. The discussion also specified that the cash was to be paid in 4 equal annual installments with interest payable to actualize it if O'Bru wanted the cash over a longer period of time. There is disagreement over the exact words used at the end of this phone call, but suffice it to say, Snyder had agreed to all of O'Bru's terms, albeit subject to his earlier stated and acknowledged conditions. Since the arrangement contained reference to a 1992 draft pick, and since it was conditional on Lindros signing a contract acceptable to him in Philadelphia, the parties had previously discussed the mechanism for making the 1992 selection. The problem was that if Lindros signed a contract, the condition was satisfied, and the pick belonged to Quebec. But if Philadelphia could not sign Lindros, the deal became inoperative, and the pick remained Philadelphia. O'Bru had earlier suggested that the general managers work it out, and if a problem arose, O'Bru and Snyder would decide. Russ Farwell, the Philadelphia general manager, phoned Page to discuss this issue and was apprised of Page's thinking on this matter. Page suggested it would be no problem and that he would meet him on the draft floor. Notwithstanding Farwell's desire to wrap this issue up at that time, he could understand Page's logic and understood it would not pose a problem. Snyder asked O'Bru for Lindros' phone number so that he could contact Lindros and determine finally Lindros' attitude about playing in Philadelphia. O'Bru promised he would get the number. During the ensuing period, O'Bru met with Lindros' agent and asked him to contact the family. Upon being asked, who is it, O'Bru responded, it's Philadelphia. In response to the agent's plea, why Philadelphia? O'Bru responded, because it had the best offer. After 45 or 50 minutes, O'Bru provided Lindros' number to Snyder, and Snyder phoned the Lindros family. During this telephone conversation, Snyder welcomed Lindros to Philadelphia and determined his interest and excitement for playing there. There were also discussions on contract negotiations with Lindros' father, setting out procedural conditions for negotiations and setting out the skeletal framework for a deal, so, in his words, Philadelphia would know where we were coming from and have an understanding of our expectations. This call apparently generated much excitement in both the Lindros residence and the Philadelphia hotel suite. During the call, O'Bru came to the Philadelphia suite and asked, is it okay? Is it okay? Or how is it? At this, Snyder smiled and gave him the thumbs up sign. O'Bru left before the call ended and asked that they call him. This was approximately 11:30 to 11:40 a.m. After the telephone call with Lindros, Snyder went to O'Bru's hotel corridor, where O'Bru suggested he was having problems with his board or partners, and asked Snyder to drop his condition regarding having to sign Lindros to a contract. Parenthetically, it should be noted that this was O'Bru's first reference to his board or partners having a role in the negotiations. In fact, O'Boo made it quite clear in his testimony that he had the authority to do the deal, saying, me and nobody else. In view of Snyder's positive telephone call with Lindros, O'Boo's request was not out of the question for Snyder. But he responded, I'll have to talk to my people. Snyder understood he had a deal by this point, and O'Boo was merely trying to renegotiate, both for certainty of the deal and to satisfy one of his partners. O'Boo's evidence was not inconsistent with this understanding, in that he admitted that Snyder asked how they were going to handle the press. Snyder left O'Boo's suite at or before 11:50 a.m. to consider the dropping of the Lindros contract condition, which would have made all things, including the draft check and the announcement of the trade, tidier. At approximately noon, O'Boo came to Snyder's suite and announced he was taking a New York offer, stating that his board said he had to take it. It is common ground between Quebec and New York, and I still find on the evidence that that deal was concluded at approximately 11:50 a.m. Snyder responded emphatically, blank, blank, we had a deal. Farwell did not succeed in finding Paget at the forum before he received a phone call from Snyder informing him of O'Boo's position regarding a New York deal. After that call, Farwell made no further attempt to find Paget and instead made the draft pick in question without Quebec's input. The parties' positions. Quebec suggests no deal was made with Philadelphia in that there was no meeting of the minds. It suggests that the test is the test of the reasonable man, and that the Philadelphia deal was never agreed to by O'Boo. Further, it suggests there were two other key items which were still outstanding, namely, the time limit for the Lindros contract condition and the mechanism for making the 1992 draft stick. Philadelphia, on the other hand, says that J. Snyder accepted O'Boo's counterposition as written, Exhibit P2, and that the condition regarding Lindros was understood and agreed. The time frame for satisfying the condition was always described as very short. Further, Quebec had suggested the draft check mechanism was no problem and should be dealt with on the draft floor, thereby, as it turned out, effectively preventing Philadelphia from getting Quebec's input into the pit. Philadelphia, like Quebec, also relied on common sense contract principles and suggested an enforceable deal was made between itself and Quebec. New York agreed with Quebec's submission and suggested that the absence of a time frame on the Lindros contract condition was the key to finding that no Philadelphia deal existed. Such a factor was present in the New York-Quebec deal. My conclusion. Having considered the matter carefully and having reviewed and assessed the evidence of all witnesses, I find that Philadelphia made an enforceable deal with Quebec with respect to Lindros, subject to a condition which existed for its benefit. Witnesses from more than one club clearly stated that O'Boo would only permit the club to speak with Lindros once it had a deal with Quebec. If that be the case, Snyder's acceptance of O'Boo's terms in the 10:30 a.m. telephone conversation and O'Boo's subsequently providing of Lindros' phone number to Snyder is clear evidence of the existence of a Philadelphia-Quebec deal, which was itself subject to the condition that Lindros sign a contract acceptable to himself in Philadelphia. I do not find the absence of a specific time frame to satisfy this condition to be an impediment to the existence of the deal, since I find Snyder and O'Boo were in agreement that Philadelphia would have a short period of time, a matter of days, to satisfy the conditions. In any event, a reasonable time frame can be implied as being reasonable and necessary in these circumstances. The issue of what period of time would be reasonable does not arise because Philadelphia was given no opportunity to conclude a contract with Lindros. If O'Boo intended the contact with the Lindros family to be something other than confirmation of a deal, he did not make that point clear to Philadelphia or Lindros' agent. In fact, they were led to believe quite the contrary. O'Boo wanted as many clubs as possible in the bidding right up to the end. He maintains that his communications with Snyder and his permitting Snyder to contact the Lindros family were merely attempts to qualify Philadelphia as a bidder at the end of the process. In his efforts, I find he clearly concluded an enforceable deal with Philadelphia with respect to Lindros and other considerations. O'Boo admitted that things were pure hell on Friday and Saturday, and he was described by many witnesses as constantly hurried and agitated. In his zeal to get the best possible results for his club and its fans, an objective from which he never wavered, he kept negotiating until he was sure he had succeeded. In some ways, certain post-10:30 a.m. negotiations were understandable, since if Lindros flatly rejected Philadelphia, O'Boo would still have his rights to trade. But in view of the development involving Philadelphia at 10:30 and 11:30 a.m., O'Boo did not have the capacity to conclude the New York Rangers arrangement at 11:50 a.m., development of which Stanley Jaffe was completely unaware. Ironically, while Quebec does not, in my opinion, end up with the New York deal, O'Boo did succeed in accomplishing his stated goal in the negotiations. Accordingly, I find that Philadelphia made an enforceable deal with Quebec with regard to Lindros' rights and other considerations. Philadelphia has subsequently waived the condition in its deal with Quebec regarding Lindros signing a contract, a unilateral right which I find Philadelphia possessed, since it was a condition which existed entirely for its own benefit. Accordingly, I hereby direct the National Hockey League to effect the changes as between Quebec and Philadelphia of the rights and services of players and draft choices as set out in Exhibit C2, except with regard to the 1992 draft pick. Quebec has stated that it does not wish Philadelphia's unilaterally made pick as part of the deal, if I were to so find. Philadelphia concurs in that position. I shall respect their wishes. However, that is not to say that this is an impediment to the deal, since it was Quebec's actions which caused that pick to be bilateral. Nor should Quebec be deprived of a portion of the consideration in the deal. I agree that the 1992 pick should be deleted from the deal, but should be replaced with consideration of approximately equal value. I give Quebec and Philadelphia 18 days to attempt to agree on such consideration and advise me of same so that it can form part of my direction. Failing mutual agreement, I shall convene a telephone conference hearing on July 17, 1992, to hear submissions on what the consideration shall be. Although the parties are not so restricted in their bilateral discussions, the parameters at that hearing, if I have to hold it, will be that the consideration should be as close as possible to equal value to the 1992 pick, but will not involve current NHL players and 1992 draftees. As stipulated by all three parties, the effect of my decision to award Lindros' rights to Philadelphia is such that any arrangement between New York and Quebec involving Lindros' services or rights will not be effective or enforceable. Further, the parties have agreed that release of any details of the Philadelphia-Quebec agreement is at the sole discretion of those two clubs. Accordingly, I have no authority to release that information in this award. I will retain jurisdiction to deal with any problems which may arise in the implementation of this award. Gentlemen, that was the decision which I released today and read to the parties on a telephone conference hearing at 10:15 this morning.
Very much, Mr. Bertuzzi. This is Gary Mahar again. We have exactly 15 minutes for questions for Mr. Stein. As I mentioned, we will go by do the three-member markets first, and then proceed with any national media that may have questions. New York, Associated Press, are there any questions for Mr. Stein? Associated Press?
I was cut off.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, we will move on. The New York Times?
Well, I imagine I would ask Mr. Stein if he finds this to be a reasonable decision in his own mind.
I commented earlier that I had confidence that the arbitrator afforded due process to everyone. No one who has not seen and been witness to the testimony could make a judgment as to, in response to your question. I have not seen the evidence. I know nothing about the evidence. I'm satisfied that Mr. Bertuzzi gave all the parties the opportunity to present the evidence. So, of course, I would have no basis for concluding other than that his decision was a reasonable one.
Any possible disciplinary action against the Quebec Nordiques for their actions after reaching agreement with Philadelphia?
I see nothing at first glance in Mr. Bertuzzi's opinion which would lead me to believe that any such action is warranted at any time for any club involved in this transaction or otherwise. If matters come to my attention that requires disciplinary action, I would give it my attention, but I see nothing at this point to lead to that conclusion.
New York Daily News, are any questions?
This is Bill Campbell in the studio in Philadelphia. We have the official decision now being handed down by the arbitrator. You all know what it is. I'd like to go to Gene Hart at Ovations.
New York Daily News?
Let's get away from the arbitrator for a second. We have to get away from the arbitrator. Gene's not going to be able to hear me. Gene's not going to be able to hear me as long as we have the teleconference line on.
In your mind, elimination.
Unfortunately, we're still in touch with the teleconference line. We're trying to get away from that so that Gene can hear me at Ovations. Gene, can you hear me now? Gene is unable to hear me. We're trying to get a reaction from Gene Hart and the Flyers people at Ovations, and as soon as we get our telephonic hookup correctly allocated here, we will do that. Now, Gene, can you hear me at Ovations? Unfortunately, he cannot, and now we've also lost the teleconference, so we'll just do the best we can here. You all know what the decision has been. The decision has been that Eric Lindros has been awarded to the Philadelphia Flyers, so there is much joy in Philadelphia. He has been awarded to the Flyers. Everything, the Flyers have come off looking very good here. The 1992 pick, of course, has been deleted from the deal because that so far is Ryan Sittler, and he belongs to Philadelphia. That pick, according to the arbitrator, will have to be made up for by a replacement of equal value. What that replacement will be is a little bit complicated. You heard the arbitrator say that if he's given them 18 days, the Flyers and the Quebec Nordiques, to work it out. He's given them 18 days to work it out. If they can't work it out, he will convene another hearing on the 17th of July, and he will tell them what the compensation will be. This is Bill Campbell at 610 WIP All Sports Radio. We'll be back in just a moment. It's 11:42.
610 WIP. Hi, everybody. Today I'm sitting in a bar having lunch with my good friend... What was your name again?
Bill.
Yeah, Bill. Now, Bill here tells me that he really enjoys a beer with his lunch, right, Bill?
I love a beer with my lunch.
Loves a beer with his lunch, but he'd never drink a beer without all the alcohol in it.
No, I wouldn't.
Right, like the one I'm having, for instance, huh, Bill?
Never in a million years.
Yeah, well, I don't happen to agree with him, but, you know, he's entitled to his own opinion.
Yes, I am.
Whoa, look over there! A professional wrestler!
Who, her? Come on.
Bill doesn't know it, but I just switched mugs with him. Boy, don't these beers taste great.
Mine does anyway.
Yeah, well, guess what, pal?
What?
I switched mugs. You're having my Miller Sharps.
Get out of here.
No, really. See, Sharps is brewed for all the taste of a great beer without all the alcohol.
Really?
For the crisp, refreshing taste of beer anytime.
So this is really a Miller Sharp?
You got it, buddy.
And this is really your mug?
Right on, Billy boy.
Ooh, gross. Interviewer germs.
Hey, where are you going?
I got a gargle.
Sharps contains less than 1/2% alcohol by volume. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Attention, homeowners and home buyers. This commercial message is made to save you money. Sunrise Mortgage Company, one of the leading mortgage bankers in the Philadelphia area, has just secured a block of fixed-rate mortgage money at a rate under 8% for 30-year mortgage loans. 7.99% with an APR of 8.353. You heard right, 7.99%. This rate is yours if you are a new applicant purchasing or refinancing in Pennsylvania. This is the lowest interest in over 20 years. If you have an existing mortgage rate of 9.5% or higher, you should contact Sunrise Mortgage now to lock into this remarkable offer. By doing so, you'll save hundreds of dollars each month. Call Sunrise Mortgage at 938-8400. That's 938-8400. 938-8400. Sunrise Mortgage Company is a direct lender and member of the Mortgage Bankers Association of America. Hutchinson, South Jersey's hometown cooling specialist, says it's payback time, as in up to $150 paid back to you when you buy a Carrier central air conditioner. That's right. Hutchinson has extended this limited time offer. Simply call Hutchinson to install a Carrier central air conditioner in your home. You'll get up to $150 back, plus all utility company rebates. Or opt for Hutchinson's no-interest, no-payment plan, where you pay absolutely nothing for 4 months. Either way, you get the deal of a lifetime. Since 1948, Hutchinson has been South Jersey's recognized leader for quality service and quick response. Now, with $150 cash back and Hutchinson's guaranteed lowest price policy, this is the best time to put central air in your home. But don't wait. This offer expires June 30th. There won't be any more extensions. Enjoy central air just in time for the hottest months of the summer and still get up to $150 back. Call Hutchinson 609-429-6677 today. 609-429-6677. This is Bill Campbell at 610 WIP All Sports Radio. The Philadelphia media is asking some questions now on the teleconference, and we'll try to salvage something from that for you right now. Let's go back to Toronto.
Expedite the termination of the dispute to get it done as quickly and as fairly as could be done with the protection of the confidentiality, obviously, of those players who would have been named or involved in from the team that did not end up with this transaction.
Bill, in your eyes, how does the league come out in this situation? How does the league look now?
I think a fair judgment of the league would say that the league has done everything anyone could possibly do to deal with the situation.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Stein from the Philadelphia media? Gary, I think that's it from here for Mr. Stein. We'll wait for Mr. Bertuzzi.
Thank you very much, Roger. That worked very well. Le Soleil in Quebec City. Okay. Journal de Quebec. New York. We will come back to New York, Mr. Everson. We're in Quebec right now. Journal de Quebec. Okay. Any questions from the Quebec media? For Mr. Stein. Okay, we'll return to New York. Mark Everson?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Gil if he was disappointed marketing-wise that Lindros isn't coming to the Rangers. Well, I think it should be obvious that it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that I would relish seeing Eric Lindros play for the Flyers in Philadelphia. So either way, as a fan, I'll get to see him play. From a marketing aspect, you understand it would be inappropriate for me to comment.
Any other questions from the New York media?
Yes, Walt McPeak, Star-Ledger. How much does this process cost, and who will pay for it?
The arbitrator normally bills based on the time.
While we're listening to the New York media quizzing Gil Stein, the president of the National Hockey League, let's try to do what we tried to do a few moments ago and go to Gene Hart at Ovations. Gene, are you there?
Yes, more clearly now in a private little room with a better phone.
Oh, that's great. Gene, please describe your personal reaction and the reaction of everybody down there.
Well, let me say this. There were no war whoops or anything like that. But, Bill, can I ask a question with a question? In all of your years in this business, have you heard anything as fascinating or as dramatic as that 20-minute review of the evidence and the eventual outcome?
I think the guy was absolutely, the only word I can think of, Gene, is professional. The guy was the essence of professionalism. Far be it from me to quibble with the accuracy or the quality of his award. That's on a different level. But I think the only word that describes the guy, which doesn't prejudge whether you're happy or sad with the result, is the guy was extremely professional, and I say that in the highest complimentary sense.
And you know, I pointed at one particular thing. He made it very evident in his mind, or at least he presented, that Philadelphia and New York dealt in the highest ethical manner, and Quebec tried in its best way, and he approved of it, of trying to get the best deal to improve their team. So rather than pointing the fingers with blame, he just pointed to time references and what made a legitimate deal. I thought, for me, I've never heard anything that complete. And, of course, he held off till the last 3 minutes. Everybody was holding their breath all throughout this city. But the ramifications, Bill, as I said before we went to the press conference and to the conference call, this is, I can't, other than the Flyers getting the franchise in the fall of the spring of 1966 and 67. I can't think of a more important or dramatic turn of events than the acquisition of this young kid from Ottawa.
It's absolutely incredible. I know that the Flyers are going to have a press conference. I don't know how soon that's going to start, Gene. You would be better able to tell us that. I guess it's going to be after this, after the press conference with Gil Stein, and then the arbitrator is finished. But I'm sure that's going to be very, very interesting. Have you seen Jay or Russ or anybody yet to get any comment?
Well, I just saw Craig, and I mentioned to him, boy, after all the heat that Jay's taken over the last couple of years, and Bill, you and I have talked, I thought much of it was unfair. He's finally come up with a grand winner, and I'm sure you recall in recent weeks when this decision was still up in the air and the Flyers perhaps could have lost this great talent, people were praising Jay as an owner who gave it the best shot to improve his team. So maybe indeed, as we've talked now, Herschel Walker in and other things happening, maybe this is a turn of events.
I was hoping that we could have stayed on the line with Toronto because I wanted to ask this question, and Jody McDonald also wanted to ask the same question because he was asking me if I would ask it. I think, Jody, you hooked up in here?
Yeah, I am.
Jody's in the studio, and rather than try to interpret what Jody wanted, Jody, why don't you put your question to Gene?
Gene, just let me ask you this one, and I don't know if you've got the answer to it. You certainly know better than I. Now that the deal is done, it'll be a while before the players come out, and I wouldn't be surprised if it takes at least 24 hours, maybe more than that. After I've said that, they'll probably announce it within 5 minutes. But after the heartache that some of these players have gone through over the last week now, more than a week, as to where they'll be playing hockey next year.
Well, one of the things I can add, Jody, that's an afterthought as an addenda to the acquisition of his rights, is that we've learned that Ron Hextall is part of the deal, and he has refused so far to talk to media. And, you know, Ron professed last week through his agent that he would not go. So Quebec's punishment out of all of this is to try to, after unloading one player who didn't want to play in Quebec, then they have one or two more now that refuse to play in that provincial city.
Now, that would not negate the deal in any way, shape, or form. The onus now is on Quebec,
right,
that they have to satisfy these players or turn around and trade them as well?
Yes.
and it'll be that much more difficult for Marcel Abu at this time after these dealings have gone down for him to make a deal with, I would think, anybody in the league.
Well, Jody, as you would say in your vernacular, what comes round comes round.
Exactly right, and I think Marcel Abu has now at least proven himself, I don't want to say underhanded, but a guy who is looking to circumvent the rules. I found it a little strange that there was no punishment levied out whatsoever in listening to the 20-minute flotation. It sounded like the arbitrator just wanted to get the deal done, and he felt that that wasn't his position.
Well, that question came up, Jody, and unfortunately it was a critical, crucial question that came up while we were trying to make contact with Gene, and I did not hear the answer. Somebody raised that question of Gil Stein, and I did not hear that. We were not able to deliver the answer.
Gene, did it surprise you that as of right now there will be no punishment against the Quebec Nordiques?
Well, I think the punishment is in their own mind, they didn't get the deal they wanted. And I think try to still boiling waters, the fact that he made it a point that all Quebec tried to do, and I think this was the emphasis that there'd be no punishment, all Quebec tried to do was everything that it could to make their team better, and you can understand that. So I think it was clear-cut diplomacy in there to end of the recent trade. And of course, Terry came alive last year after 3 years in the doghouse with 13 gold, and Steve Duchesne. So literally it's 4 regulars and a future draft pick. But no no Mark Recchi, no Rod Brindamore. And so if you could look right now, the Flyers tentatively can put on paper an opening line of Brindamore on the left wing, at center ice Lindros, and on the right side Mark Recchi, and that would give you as good as there is in the league, maybe except for Lemieux, Stevens, and Yager.
It seems to me that the complicated part of this whole deal, and it might be a little bit premature to ask this question until we read it on the fax message, but the arbitrator, I heard him say, this is a deal, and correct me here if either of you disagree, except for the 1992 pick, that will be deleted from the deal and replaced by a player of equal value, but that player will not be from the current roster, nor will he be a 1992 pick. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes.
And if I am...
In other words, what the Flyers have to do in Quebec, come up with somebody who may be approximate to a 7th overall selection in the draft.
Wow.
Do you think that could mean a future pick, Gene? I kind of read into it that they didn't want it to be an existing player, that they wanted it to be a draft pick of some sort down the road and come to a compromise, whether it's the 93, the 94, put in qualifiers as to where the Flyers might finish, if they're in the top 7 or if they're out of the top 7 and they're fourth. But I thought what he was trying to say was it won't be a player, that it will be a pick somewhere down the road.
It will not be a player in the current roster or any member of the 1992 draft.
And he's given them 18 days to get that done.
So what it might be, let me give you a guess, that the Quebec has its pick in 93, 94, and 95 of the best number.
You know, one thing that stands out here, Jody, and I'd like to get your reaction to this, too, as well as yours, Gene. You know what this guy said early on when he began to read his decision? That 8 clubs were serious contenders for this guy. 24 hours before the draft, there were 8 serious contenders. And he also said that this deal was made the way deals have been made for 75 years.
Yeah, and I think that was significant.
Yeah, I do too.
The idea of what has been the rule of thumb. And Bill, you know that in baseball and in all sports, it's been that way. How many deals were made in a coffee shop or by phone at midnight, and then you say, we'll take care of the paperwork tomorrow or on Monday. And so I guess what you had to go here is not just pure law, but what has been the rule of thumb and how these trades are made, and I think that was the guideline. And as I also figured out, to me, maybe more significant is, remember he said the Ranger deal was made at 11:58. The Flyers' last contact came at 11:50. So I'm wondering, Jody and Bill, do you read into that the future of the Patrick division was decided by a gap of 8 minutes?
Could very well be. Yeah. And I think that was another qualifier that the arbitrator tried to put on it when he continually mentioned that Jaffe did not know that the Flyers had a deal on the table, that it has now proved out to be a done deal, but he did not know that at all, and I think that's the way he got Marcel Abu off the hook for double dealing, is saying that he never went to the Rangers and said, I'm this close to doing a Flyer deal, here's your last shot, can you up them? And I think that is what probably took the penalty from Quebec out of the equation.
Hey, Gene, in naming Hextall, Forsberg, Ricci, Huffman, Duchesne, those 5 players, is it also $15 million and a 1992 number 1 pick?
No, scratch the 92 pick.
The pick of last year.
That will be debated over the next 18 days, but I'm sure the money is there.
Okay.
You don't know exactly how much it is, though.
But that was the original 15.
Okay, Gene, I've got 2 questions for you, then I'm going to let Bill wrap up. First of all, you got a list of the flyers that were included. Did you get a list of what Rangers might have been in the deal and what their deal was?
I think good diplomatic sense would never be revealed by the arbiter. That might be by the Rangers, but probably they never will, so that a Patrick or the 2 Soviets, Nemchinov and Kovalyev, or Tony Amonte or Beezer, will ever know for sure that whether they were going to unload them.
And last question, Gene, they have the 18 days to work out the compensation for the 1992 draft pick.
Yeah.
A lot of times we heard this phrase pop up in the negotiations. What is good faith negotiation? Do you believe that Jay Snyder and Marcel Abou at this time can have good faith negotiations, or do you almost guarantee this is going to go the full 18 days and fall back in the arbitrator's lap?
No, I think all have learned their lesson and would try to handle this. But again, Mr. Bertuzzi said that I'll be there if they can't come to an agreement. And you remember the intricate paragraph at the end. I remain involved until all conditions of this statement are resolved. So it's not like he's going home and then the cats can fight again. But I also would like to ask you this question, Jody and Bill. How would you feel right now if you were Lou Lamoriello of the New Jersey Devils, and you have to your west Lemieux and Yager, to your east you've got Messier, and to the south now you have Lindros?
It wouldn't surprise me if the Devils were one of those 8 who were in it right up until the last minute. So when the decision came down that he wasn't going to the Devils, it became apparent he's had to sit there and weigh this for the next 10 days, which is worse for him, to get the Flyers coming up from behind or let the Rangers get that much further out in front of the division if Mr. Lindros is as good as he is supposed to be.
That's an interesting observation, Jody. Was or was not Lamoriello a witness in these proceedings?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Gene,
one thing that would be there, he might have been a, what do they call it, a prejudicial witness, because he certainly didn't want Lindros across the river in New York.
Okay. Thank you all, gentlemen, very much. Jody, I'll give you a couple of minutes off to organize so you can come back on here in just a few minutes. Jody will be back in just a couple of minutes. Gene, stand by, because I know when they finish this teleconference Q&A from writers around the country, from Quebec, New York, and Philadelphia, who are involved certainly in this situation, we'll come back to the Spectrum. The Flyers will hold a press conference. Gene Hart will anchor that from Ovations, so everybody stay tuned. I just want to take a moment for all of you can appreciate and understand that we had a rather complicated electronic hookup here today, and a lot of people worked on it. And I want to thank Pat Toddy and Joe Wechter and Bill Rainier, as well as Gene Hart and Jody McDonald, who've taken part in this. Thank you all for being with us today. I'm going to turn the anchoring festivities over to Jody McDonald and Gene. We'll see you all tomorrow at the appointed hour. Eric Lindros is a Philadelphia Flyer, and I know that'll make for an exciting afternoon for you with Jody, with Howard Eskin live from September's Place, and with Gary Cobb later. This is Bill Campbell. Good day, good sports.
Nobody knows the Phillies like 610 WIP Philadelphia. When your copy machine breaks, do the employees say, "We'll just use carbon paper"? When the lights go out, the folks say, "That's okay, we'll work in the dark"? No, they're looking for a hero who can get those lights burning and that copier humming. You can be that hero. Just turn to the Bell Atlantic Business-to-Business Directory, the B2B. The B2B is the business yellow pages with the red cover, and it covers the Delaware Valley. So it's where you'll find all the suppliers, parts, and services your fellow workers depend on. So if your company runs low on supplies, are you going to say, "Better go easy on the work, gang"? I don't think so. Because when the going gets tough, the tough get out the B2B. The Bell Atlantic Business-to-Business Directory. It's just business, nothing personal. The new B2B directory is coming to your office soon from Bell of Pennsylvania. Use it and be all that you can be to be.
Business travelers can have their pick of fine Philadelphia hotels. There's the one on 17th Street, Logan Circle, Old City, even over by the Square. What do they have in common? They're all too common. You see the same chain hotels in every major city with their crisp, if impersonal service, cookie-cutter amenities, and a level of quality that, well, fluctuates. Fortunately, there is an option. Corman Suites Hotel and Conference Center. Fiercely independent, uniquely Philadelphia, truly one of a kind. With its neon sculpture overlooking the Parkway at 20th Street, Corman Suites offers showcased views of the Art Museum and the city's stunning skyline. You'll enjoy every amenity you'd expect from a national chain, plus some, like free parking, that you'd never expect. All at surprisingly modest rates. For a slice of Philadelphia life in the lap of luxury, call 569-7200 today. Corman Suites Hotel, the one and only hotel of its kind.
The amazing AM, all sports radio station, 610 WIP.
3 minutes after 12 here on 610 WIP. Jody Mack with you. In case you're just tuning in, just getting out for lunch, and you haven't had a chance to hear, Eric Lindros is a flyer. The arbitrator, Larry Bertuzzi, ruled in the favor of the Flyers that a deal was done. We're going to head back down to the Spectrum. The Philadelphia press corps is still asking questions of Mr. Bertuzzi. As soon as they finish up, the Flyers will have a press conference of their own from Ovations down at the Spectrum, and we'll be bringing that all to you. Let's head back down to the Spectrum.
Going to waste 1 ounce of energy and not expend it in accomplishing that goal.
We talked from Quebec a little bit. Hello?
Are there other questions from Philadelphia? Yes. Aaron, over at Gary Miles, Philadelphia Inquirer, please.
Larry, was there a point in the hearings themselves when you began to see this was going to be the result? And in your dealings with the league, how momentous is this decision?
Okay, Gary, I can honestly tell you that at no point in the hearings did I come to a conclusion. There were points in the hearing when I felt it looked like it was going one way, but then with the effectiveness of the lawyers and with the testimony I was getting in sequentially, I would immediately get driven the other way, and I was going a bit batty during the process. I assume most arbitrators or judges feel that way. So when I left you, Gary, Saturday morning, no, I had not made a decision.
So Quebec, and we talked from Quebec too?
Susan, are we still in Philadelphia?
Could we take one more from Philadelphia and then we'll move to Quebec?
Larry Hanover from the Trenton Times.
Can you explain, was it a moment of confusion that Abu never mentioned he had to get permission from his board of directors to consummate a deal, that he made it look like he was the only man that had a say in this?
I don't know whether it was a moment of confusion or what we in the negotiating field refer to as negotiating talk. I'll leave that for others to decide. I've bargained for 20 years, and I know that people say a lot of things during negotiations that are negotiating talk.
Thank you. We'll move to Quebec now. Question from Quebec?
From Quebec. Hello? Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Quebec.
Jean-Paul here. Mr. Bertuzzi, what was Mr. Obu's reasons for not letting the club talk to Eric Lindros? What was the reason?
Of that was that it would create a free-for-all where effectively the bidding for Mr. Lindros might take place at the Lindros table instead of at the Quebec Nordique table. He described it as a potential free-for-all if that was the case, and I could see the logic of that position.
The Rangers, did they talk to Lindros at 11:50 on the 20th?
No.
Never did?
No.
Was there any handshake on the part of Marcel Aubu and Ed Snyder from the Flyers?
No.
Never did?
No. By the time Ed Snyder got there, Mr. Aubu was claiming he had a deal with New York.
Any other questions from Quebec? So I'd like to move to some national media. USA Today.
Again from Quebec.
Thank you. Go ahead, Quebec.
Okay. Mr. Bertuzzi, do you think it's right what Marcel Aubu did, talking to the Flyers at 10:30 in the morning and keep talking with the Rangers? Is that normal procedures when you negotiate?
In a situation where everyone knows there are a number of bidders, it is not improper to be speaking with a number of clubs simultaneously. And to the extent that Mr. Aubu was trying to get the absolute best for his Quebec franchise, I did not find it unusual to hear that he was conducting negotiations with this club, that club, that club, that club. Everyone were big boys, and they knew the procedure. They knew the game they were in. Where it got a little difficulty was, in my opinion, Mr. O'Boo reached a point where he made a deal with Philadelphia. And at that point, subject to Philadelphia satisfying their conditions, the process should have come to an end. But it's a bit like a speeding car. It doesn't stop on a dime.
USA Today?
Kevin Allen, USA Today.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yes. When you were looking at this in terms of trying to arbitrate it, were you trying to apply Canadian contract law, U.S. contract law, or just a merging of the two, or just a common sense philosophy on what a contract should be?
Great question. There were lawyers from Ontario and Quebec, and for those of you in the United States, Quebec law is based on civil code and Ontario law is based on common law, so there's very little similarity there. There were lawyers from Pennsylvania, New York, and Illinois. And so if I ever tried to decide which law would apply, we would be here until Mr. Lindros is well past retirement. We applied the NHL law of common sense, and I don't think anybody had any difficulty with understanding that concept.
Associated Press?
Harry, I'm wondering if there's any fault finding here on your part. That are legitimate?
No, it's a regrettable situation that arose, but it arose because three people were trying to do the best for their franchises in a fair way, and they bumped into each other.
You died? No question for died, Canadian Press?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. Neil Stevens in Toronto.
Go ahead.
On page 4 of Mr. Bertuzzi's decision, he states that Mr. Lindros' agent suggested that the player would prefer that the deal not be with Philadelphia, and I wondered if he could explain why Mr. Kern would have stipulated that.
Sorry, that's the evidence which I heard about that conversation, and I could not stipulate as to the why. It's not for me to do.
Explain to you why he was making that remark?
It's not for me to try to figure out why he made it, just the finding and the evidence that he made it. You'll have to speak to him about that.
Question at the end? No question there. We'll go through some of the NHL markets. Boston?
Yeah, this is Steve Harris. In the minutes after the Philadelphia deal was actually made, did Mr. O'Boo go to any other NHL teams besides New York in an attempt to get a better deal?
I don't know.
There's no evidence to suggest that was the case?
I thought it was relevant to the issue before me, so I don't know the answer to that question.
Another question from Boston? Buffalo?
Mr. Bertuzzi, Jim Kelly from the Buffalo News. At the point Mr. Snyder said, blank, blank, we had a deal, did Mr. O'Boo dispute that in later testimony?
Yes, he did dispute it. Of course he disputed. He took the position he had a deal with New York. He said, no, we didn't. I have a deal with New York.
And some of the methods that New York used, that they act in a professional manner. Did Mr. O'Boo at all times, in your opinion, act in a professional manner in these proceedings?
Mr. O'Boo acted as a professional negotiator in a professional manner, trying to do the best for his hockey club. As I said, there were so many people there, they all bumped into each other.
Thank you, Buffalo. Chicago? Calgary?
You said in the report that there were certain impediments, perhaps, to Lindros signing a deal with any club. What were those impediments?
Word got out that, I'm trying to think of what the specifics were.
11 minutes after 12 here on 610 WIP. Jody McDonald back in the studios with you. We're going to take a short time out, and we're going to open up the telephone lines for your thoughts and conversations. We may just get one or two in, a couple in. When the Flyer press conference begins, we're going to go back down to the spectrum. We'll take a short time out and then start taking your calls at 5920610 in Pennsylvania, Jersey, 9630610 on the Bell Atlantic and Metrophone mobile systems. A free call, dial star 610. Eric Lindros to the Flyer.
WIP.
You know, the thing about sellathons today is most of them have so many whistles and balloons and banners that it's hard to find the deal and all that camouflage.
Well, your Chrysler Plymouth dealers think it's time to get real.
So, here it is. No hype, no pressure, and absolutely clear.
You can get a Plymouth Sundance America
with automatic and air, AM/FM stereo, rear defrost, and driver's airbag.
for just $94.84. That's with the rebate.
For a limited time only.
Well, we had to have a little pressure.
But the thing to remember is your Chrysler Plymouth dealers keep it plain and clear.
And to be sure we give it to you straight, we'd like you to know that the $94.84 price quoted was the manufacturer's suggested retail price, minus the $1,000 rebate. And it included the options we listed. Title and taxes are extra. Actual dealer prices may vary.
So head for your local Chrysler Plymouth dealers, and they'll show you why Plymouth Sundance America is equipped and priced to give you some real advantages for the real world. Why not see them today?
The golf season is here, and now's the time to get your game in shape at Great Golf Learning Center. Great Golf's program begins with personalized instruction, making it ideal for beginners or experienced players. Programs include ongoing video analysis, use of hitting nets, putting greens, and the innovative Pathfinder Club at home and in the center. Through laser technology, this revolutionary club provides immediate feedback and helps you learn and maintain a consistently good golf swing, the key to lowering your score, improving your overall game, and enjoying the game more. You'll find Great Golf Learning Centers in Blackwood, Voorhees, Valley Forge, Cherry Hill, and now in Horsham and in Bucks County in the Oxford Point Shopping Center on Old Lincoln Highway. New centers opening soon in Delaware County and the main line. Call today, 1-800-TEE-OFF-9. And remember, great golf makes a great gift. Call 1-800-TEE-OFF-9 for details. That's 1-800-TEE-OFF-9. When you paint the outside of your home, don't waste time with the so-called bargain paint you bought on sale. Do it right the first time with MAB Seashore House Paint. Since 1899, MAB Paint has led the industry in developing and manufacturing only the highest quality paint. So your home will stay beautiful for years and years. Visit your nearby MAB Paint store, dealer, or Richlux Home Center today. And insist on the quality products manufactured by MAB Paint. Summertime's the perfect time for outdoor home improvement values from MAB Paint, like Seashore Acrylic Latex House Paint or Seashore Acrylic Latex Trim Enamel, perfect for vinyl or aluminum siding. Repair and seal your driveway with quality MAB Blacktop Sealer, now just $8.49 a 5-gallon can. And don't forget a driveway and roof coating applicator, now only $5.38. Check Thursday's Inquirer and Friday's Daily News for more great MAB values. And enter your child in the Phillies Practice with a Pro sweepstakes, only at MAB Paint Stores and Dealers.
12:15 here on 610 WIP. In case you're just tuning in, arbitrator Larry Bertruzzi has decided in favor of the Flyers that the Flyers, Jay Snyder and Michel Abu, had a deal and that the Rangers' subsequent deal was irrelevant at that time. And it was a long, drawn-out 20-minute dissertation on why the deal came down. Very well written, very well spoken, a lot of legalese. Bottom line is Eric Lindros is a Flyer. They are continuing their conversations, teleconference with the arbitrator, Mr. Bertruzzi, in Canada, and most of those questions have already been answered and or repeats. But when the Flyers start their press conference, we're going to head back down to Ovation for that press conference, but we're going to open up the phones for a couple of minutes. If we do have to drop quickly out of your telephone call, I hope that we have your understanding that we need to get back down to the press conference. We'll see if we can sneak a couple calls in and get some reaction from Philadelphia fans. Pat from Westchester, you're on 610 WIP.
Jody, it's a great day in Philly.
Well, off the trade, I've been saying all along, I've got to wait to see what the trade is, if they gave up too much. I think it's a heck of a trade.
Yeah, if they're only giving up those players, it's a steal.
When Gene appropriately put it, that you've now got a first line of Brindamore on the left, Lindros at center, and Recchi on the right, that's a darn good first line. Now, they'll worry about the second. The third line's a little further down the road, but they kept intact. That's what I was afraid of, that if they had to give up two of those good players, either Recchi and Ricci or Recchi and Brindamore, or Ricci and Brindamore, all right, so you saved one of your superstars, and I thought that was ultimately important. But for them to get out of there with only giving up one of their three big players, if you look at the three big ones as Brindamore, Recchi, and Ricci, I think they made a heck of a deal.
Just a quick question for you. Is there any problem trading Duchesne since he doesn't have a contract currently?
I know you can't do it in the NBA, and I know you can't do it in the National Football League, but apparently you can do it in the National Hockey League, because he's in the deal.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about.
They traded his rights, is all that they did, and I would not be surprised if Marcel Aubut had some problems with the likes of Ron Hextall. Kerry Huffman, I don't know about. Ricci is a Canadian-born player, French-Canadian, and I think that he'll probably go willingly to Quebec. But Marcel Aubut's got more problems on his hands now.
Okay, great.
Pat, thank you. Kevin from West Point's up next here on 610 WIP. Hello, Kevin.
Yeah, he's on, Jody.
Good.
How accurate is, the reports of which players are going to Quebec?
Well, it came from Gene Hart, who's down at Ovation with the entire Flyer contingent. So I would tend to guess, until I hear it out of Jay Snyder's mouth, it's not 100% official, but I don't think Gene would be handed a bogus list, not the voice himself.
Right. I mean, if that's the case, I think I agree with the caller before. I think we stole. Aside from hopefully we don't have to give up that first round draft pick next year.
Well, that will be determined, and certainly there will be ongoing negotiations. The arbitrator will sit down if they can't get it done in 18 days. A 93 number one, I think, is probably what it's going to come down to. It may be down the road. They may throw some contingencies and qualifiers on it, but they're going to have to give up a draft pick somewhere down the road. 93 might be the best time to do it.
Yeah, but isn't it supposed to be a real good draft next year?
Well, that's part of the argument that the Flyers will make, that a number one next year might not be equivalent to the 92, and the arbitrator is going to have to weigh all of that as well.
What about the Flyers' defense? Do you think they're going to have to make a trade for someone now? Anything in the wind?
You know, now I have to sit down with a Flyer roster with the additions and subtractions of today and see where their weaknesses and where their strengths lie. Giving up Duchesne, giving up Huffman, yeah, it opens up a couple of holes, but I'm sure the Flyers have contingency plans for those.
Okay.
All right, Kevin?
Have a good day in Philadelphia.
Thank you. Take it easy. J.D. from Clifton Heights is on 610 WIP. Hello, J.D.
Hey, Jody, what's up?
Not much.
Is this tremendous or what?
I think that they made themselves a heck of a deal.
Oh, it's going to be sweet. A question I had was, what happens if they can't sign him? I was hearing that after a year he could be gone.
Oh, yeah.
They have to sign within it. Do you think any problems are going to come up?
I don't think I would mind being either Eric Lindros or Lindros' father at this time, because they now have a clock against the Philadelphia Flyers, which runs 1 year, and then we may have another major draft day scenario next year. Certainly it won't go down to the 11th hour and 50 minutes if the Flyers can't get him signed and someone wants to take a crack and there's just a fire sale a week from the draft that they team like the Rangers, because, you know, the Rangers won't lose interest in him if he doesn't play this year, if they think they can dip more into Paramount's money and overpay, and that's what Lindros is going to be looking for now, probably overpayment. No, the deal has not been done, as I know yet that Lindros has been signed, but as you heard in the arbitrator's long dissertation, that there were conversations, that he was semi-excited about coming here to Philadelphia, and a deal should be struck.
One other thing, Jody. Have you ever seen, the last 3 weeks, any other city have as much sports going on at one time?
Never.
All four sports teams, all at once.
In the history of sports, and that's saying a lot, I don't know if there's ever been as much major personnel changes, major news breaking, controversial, unfortunately morbid news breaking over the last couple of days is what's happened here in Philadelphia. This is, for my lifetime, and I can talk to Bill and others who've been around longer than I, but I've never seen anything like this before.
All right, thanks for your time, Jody.
JD, thank you. Nick from South Philly is up on 610 WIP. Hi,
Jody
Nick.
Mack, how you doing?
I'm okay.
I mean, words can't describe the feeling right now. What I wanted to ask you was, listen to Bartozzi, who did a tremendous job of giving us the whole scenario, what happened during these testimonies. Which witness do you feel gave the favor into the Flyers for deciding that Lindros to come to Philadelphia?
I don't know if it was any one particular witness as much as it was the way things broke out. I'm sure Jay Snyder himself had to be the key guy. And it all came back down to the Eric Lindros telephone call. That the decision for the Quebec Nordiques to give the Flyers permission to call Lindros after they had said at many times that they would not give permission until a deal had been struck because they didn't want it to be a free-for-all, and as Gene so properly put it, as the arbitrator so properly put it, let the bidding take place at the Lindros table rather than the Quebec table. I think that was when the deal was consummated, as soon as they gave them permission. Now, it gets a little gray because there was a period of time, and a short period of time, under which the Flyers were supposed to come to an agreement with Lindros. But with the 92 pick being in there, and knowing that they didn't get permission until the last hour, an hour before the draft, was that short period of time enough for the Flyers to come to a deal, and is that reasonable to believe that they could strike a deal with him in an hour? Now, I don't think that a short period of time was ever actually defined. Is a short period of time an hour? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? Is it a day? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? Is it a week? I don't know that that was ever defined. It was just that Marcel Abu had continually said that there would be a short period of time under which a team could get the chance to sign Lindros. But his ultimate statement was that he would not give any permission for anybody to talk to Lindros until a deal was struck. As soon as he gave the Flyers permission, for me and apparently for the arbitrator, that means the deal was done.
And also a thing that you stated before was for 75 years they've been making handshake deals. When you brought up the incident when your father and the Phillies signed Jose Cardinal, that's something that's been going on for years.
Sent him to halftime of a in between games of a doubleheader. There certainly wasn't time to get paperwork into the National Baseball League at that time. Deals are done, and good faith deals are done with a meeting of the minds, and it doesn't have to necessarily be written down.
Well, I know you have a lot of calls, Jody Mack. I just want to express my excitement and everyone else in Philadelphia. Thank you.
Nicky, thank you.
All right, bye.
Appreciate it. Let's take a couple more calls here. Tom from the Northeast. Tom, you're on 610 WIP.
Hey, Jody, how you doing?
I'm good. You?
Heck of a lot better now than I was an hour ago.
I think most Philadelphia sports fans feel that way.
Jody, two statements. One, I would like to go on record as I've been a real critic of Jay Snyder the last couple of years. His decisions, firing Bobby Clark, personnel decisions. I would just like to say that I think he's righted his ship and has won back a lot of fans here. He sure has won back my sport, and personally, I'd like to thank his efforts for him and the rest of the Flyers.
And it was
not necessarily landing Lindros, but just pursuing it to the utmost. I mean, I don't think too many organizations would have done what they did.
Right. First was consummating the deal, which, as we know, was not easy at all, and then having to fight for it for another week tells you how dedicated Jay Snyder was to improving this hockey team and getting this young man in as a Philadelphia Flyer.
Yeah, hats off to Jay. The other part, I look at the deal, obviously it's a great deal. Hextall is my favorite player. I'm really going to miss Hextall, the intensity he brought. But I think you got to give up, obviously, talent to get talent. But I'm a little concerned about defense, Jody. Huffman, Duchesne, Markell close to signing with Detroit. If I'm the Flyers, I gotta really sit Hal down and try and work a deal out with him.
That's something that they will worry about down the line, getting themselves some more defense. And utmost for me is getting a backup goaltender. Now you've got Roussel, and you don't know about the youngsters, whether they can fill in. I think they've got to make a deal for an experienced backup goaltender. But I think Jay Snyder has basically bought himself about 24 hours to kick back, take it easy, have a beverage of his choice, and worry about putting the rest of the pieces of the Flyers together over the next couple of weeks, or not, if not couple of months. 25 minutes after 12 here on 610 WIP. Jody Mack with you. Eric Lindros has been awarded to the Flyers. He is coming here if the Flyers can get him signed to a contract. Jay Snyder's work has just begun. We'll be back in just a minute, and the press conference should start in about 10 or 15 down at the Spectrum.
How often have you heard warehouse clearance, 0% financing, 50% off, double rebate, and the ever-popular red tag sale? Well, there is one dealer with a real sale going on right now. Till June 30th, Marty Sussman Honda is having a serious Honda sale. This could be our best Honda month ever, so till Tuesday, Marty Sussman is offering new 92 Honda Accord 4-doors in stock for under $12,000. Under $12,000. New 92 4-door Honda Civics for under $10,000. Under $10,000. Plus the all-new restyled Honda Prelude for under $15,000. Under $15,000. And all Marty Sussman Honda buyers get a free loaner car when in for required maintenance service. Before you buy or lease any new Honda, you must see Marty Sussman for a second opinion. Marty Sussman Honda, 1543 Eastern Road in Willow Grove. The Sussman Organization, your second opinion dealer.
Attention, homeowners and home buyers. This commercial message is made to save you money. Sunrise Mortgage Company, one of the leading mortgage bankers in the Philadelphia area, has just secured a block of fixed-rate mortgage money at a rate under 8% for 30-year mortgage loans. 7.99% with an APR of 8.353. You heard right, 7.99%. This rate is yours if you are a new applicant purchasing or refinancing in Pennsylvania. This is the lowest interest in over 20 years. If you have an existing mortgage rate of 9.5% or higher, you should contact Sunrise Mortgage now to lock into this remarkable offer. By doing so, you'll save hundreds of dollars each month. Call Sunrise Mortgage at 938-8400. That's 938-8400. 938-8400. Sunrise Mortgage Company is a direct lender and member of the Mortgage Bankers Association of America.
For a home run deal, stop by Michael Jack's Restaurant at Market Street Live. Monday through Saturday, play Labatt's Baseball Trivia. Register to win a trip to the Toronto Skydome to watch the Blue Jays. Labatt's Baseball Trivia. Monday through Saturday, win a trip to Toronto. Brought to you by Labatt's Blue, Canada's #1 beer, and Michael Jack's at Market Street Live.
27 minutes after 12 here on 610 WIP. The Flyer press conference down at Ovations at the Spectrum should start in approximately 10 minutes from now. So we're going to take a couple more telephone calls and then head down. Ed and Jay Snyder both will be there. Russ Farwell, Bobby Clark, the entire Flyer contingent. That's coming up in about 10 minutes. But let's talk to Mark from Ben Salem, get his reaction. Mark, you're on 610 WIP.
Jody Mack, this is just unbelievable. I'm really excited about this whole situation. As such, the Philadelphia fans should be incredibly excited about this whole thing, because I think this past couple weeks with Philadelphia sports is actually the rebirth of the true greatness of Philadelphia sports. And moving back up here, coming back home, and having all this stuff happen to me, and this city couldn't be any better, I'll tell you.
To say it's been exciting would be an understatement.
One question, has anybody heard the conversation that I guess they had with Lindros when they supposedly had the deal, what the comments were by Eric when they asked him, when they said welcome to the club? Or did he just assume that, okay, the deal's done, he's happy, he's ready to start the negotiations, or was there any sort of comments about whether or not he would have wanted to play to with Philly or not?
That's a question that we hope will be asked and answered in the upcoming press conference. I'm sure that'll be asked of Jay Snyder, and since he was on the phone with him, I think he should have the answer.
That'd be great. Well, everybody, I'm really pumped. I know you got a lot of calls. Can't wait to see the Flyers.
Mark, thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Bill from Norristown's on 610 WIP. Hello, Bill.
Scenario. If by chance the Flyers couldn't sign him, would they be stronger if they gave Lindros to the Rangers for the package of players they offered Quebec?
Well, at least Marcel Abreu thinks so, because he wanted to do the Ranger deal.
You like that?
I don't know who the Ranger players are yet. We found out who the Flyer players are, and we may never find out who the Ranger players are. It would behoove the Rangers not to release those names, because why would you want to alienate any of the players that now have to come back to you? They might keep that under wraps. You may never find that out. It may leak out. It may find its way out. I don't know even if the Flyers would go so far as to mention them. I think that good faith would keep the Flyers from saying anything either, and only those in the proceedings know exactly what the deal was. So you may never know what the Ranger deal is, but if they can't get him signed, Jay Snyder might just put a call in for the Rangers. Thanks for checking in, Bill. Let's check in with another Bill, this one from Huntington Valley. Bill, you're on 610 WIP.
Hi. If I understand it right, and it sounds crazy to me, that the Flyers now have a short period of time, quote-unquote, which is defined as a couple of days to sign Lindros, and if they can't, the whole deal is nullified?
Oh, absolutely not. The deal is done. Eric Lindros is now Flyer property. I can tell you how long they have to sign him. Approximately 350 days. Because if he's not signed, it doesn't matter whether his rights have been traded, he would go back into the draft, I'm 90% sure about this, at next year's draft. Any player that's drafted is 2 years the property of whoever has his property, and if he's not signed with any NHL team who owns his property, he goes back into the draft there for 2 days. So certainly not. They have until next year's draft to sign him. They're not planning on waiting quite that long. They want Eric Lindros down at the Spectrum for this upcoming season.
I thought I understood the arbitrator to say that the deal, as it was negotiated originally between Snyder and Orbeau, was contingent upon the Flyers signing Lindros within a couple of days.
That was one of the things that was debated on and talked about, but he felt that the deal was done as soon as they gave him permission to talk to Lindros. That it wasn't necessitated that he had to be signed because it was such a short termination between then and when one of the aspects of the draft had to be affected, the draft pick taken by Quebec.
Right.
That negated that.
That would, if that's the case, if they only had that short a period of time, it would place a tremendous amount of power in the hands of Lindros.
Oh, absolutely. Well, even more so, but he's still got chock full of power because so much has been made of this, so much ballyhooed, so much attention here in Philadelphia. If they don't get this young man signed now, how big a PR mistake would that be? They have to get him signed, and I think they will. Bill, thanks.
He's going to write his own ticket.
I think he's going to write a very handsome ticket. Let's put it that way. Bill, take it easy.
Thank you.
12:32 here on 610 WIP. McMahon with you. Eric Lindros has become a Philadelphia Flyer. The arbitration decision goes Philadelphia's way. The players have been thrown out as to who goes to Philadelphia. They include Ron Hextall, Mike Ricci, Steve Duchesne, Terry Huffman, a believed $15 million, and also a draft pick to be determined somewhere down the road. We're going to join the Flyers and a press conference down in Ovations in just a couple of minutes, so please stay with us.
Refreshment, there's nothing like the pure taste of the Rockies. Silver Bullet Smooth Coors Light. It's the right beer now.
Hey, South Jersey, want to save money calling Silly Town? Let Southside Johnny and the Airfare Juice tell you how to keep costs down. If you're in South Jersey, call Billy not all day. Not all day. South Bend and JB, gonna play that way.
That's right, South Jersey. Just dial 10NJB before 1 and the area code of the number you're calling in the Philadelphia area and save 10 to 30% off AT&T regular long-distance rates on most calls.
Hey, South Jersey, call Billy whenever you choose.
Dial 10NJB before 1 and the area code of the number you're calling in the Philadelphia area. Applies to calls from most areas of New Jersey's Camden, Gloucester, and Burlington counties. Savings vary based on time of day, length, and distance of call. 10NJB from New Jersey Bell, a Bell Atlantic company.
We're here at the Summer 92 Sports Trivia Quiz, testing your knowledge in the field of baseball. Question number 1. Who's the best manager this season?
Easy. It's got to be Roger Craig.
Sorry, kid. The winning answer is Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks?
Question number 2. Who's the best player behind the plate?
How about Benito Santiago?
Wrong again, son. The correct answer, Gina Davis.
Gina Davis is catcher?
Question number 3. Who's the hottest hitter in the game?
Well, there's a lot of guys who could...
The answer is Madonna.
You're telling me Madonna swings a bat?
Yeah, that's not all she swings.
No way.
And finally, what makes this team the best in the league?
What league? It sounds to me like they're in a league of their own.
You got it. It's Columbia Pictures, A League of Their Own. The Grand Slam comedy from the writers of City Slickers and the director of Big. This summer, Tom Hanks is managing, Gina Davis is catching, and Madonna is batting cleanup. A League of Their Own, directed by Penny Marshall, rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Starts Wednesday at theaters everywhere.
610 WIP.
24 in front of 1 here on 610 WIP. We're heading back down now to the Spectrum. Gene Hart is there. He will advise us as when this press conference is going to get underway. Gene?
Always a pleasure to talk with you, Jody.
Well, we just did it a couple of minutes ago. Let's do it again. Gene, as always, when you get to the phones and get to the callers, questions pop up. and I was not 100% positive on this answer. Perhaps you can answer it for us. Now that Lindros is a Philadelphia Flyer, does the same rule pertain to the length of time that the Flyers have to sign him? Do they have an extended period of time, or forever do they hold his rights?
They have his rights until they relinquish them.
It doesn't matter that it's just the original team who drafts him has 2 years with which to sign him. Once the individual is traded, then he's the property of the Flyers ad infinitum until he signs and or passes away?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I thought that they were now under the same time constraints as Quebec was to get it done before next year's draft.
No, not at all. But I'm going to say this, Jody, as I clarify it. I can only think of 2 other occasions in the Flyers' 25-year history that match this. The one, of course, is the acquisition of the franchise, which was like 1,000-to-1 shot. And the other is the signing of Bob Clark. That didn't have particularly large significance at the time because no one knew how good Clark was going to become. But the emphasis in building a franchise, I thought a line in the paper might be, for the second time in Flyers history, they've gotten a franchise. We have a limited partnership here. One of the part owners of the Philadelphia Flyers, Sylvan Tobin. And Sylvan, if I could do this, Jody, as long as Mr. Tobin is here, I think the key thing is that the Flyers' integrity was revalidated.
Absolutely. I think that the side with the right won, and it's good for us, good for Philadelphia, and good for the franchise.
I'm going to use the same phrase I did to Bill Campbell. I thought that 20 minutes, Mr. Bertuzzi explaining his rationale was both fascinating and dramatic.
If I had to listen to it during the press conference, I think I'd have torn my hair out. Luckily, I heard about it before the 11 o'clock press conference. I knew what the outcome was, but halfway through, I thought the Rangers still had them.
I don't know how tough the contract negotiations, Jody, are going to be with the Flyers, but I've already seen Mr. Tobin empty his wallet and give him all his cash to Jay Snyder and said that I can hawk my car. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gene.
Yeah, there's a great delight here. A franchise player, and already, as I understand from Tom Brookshire, the phones are off the hook for both the seats available in the new building and the old building. Jack Betson has come in. He says, Gene, you know that list of single seats that I put out? They're clamoring for them now. So I think the instant effect of what everyone knew would come to pass with the seats available in the new building has come at least so far in just the first hour of the acquisition. He is not a Flyer yet. They have the rights to Eric Lindros, if I could make that differentiation.
Gene, I know that there was one conversation had and then a gag order put on thereafter. I'm sure that the negotiations will now start fairly rapidly, maybe within the hour, maybe within a day. But this is probably not going to be an easy sign. The Lindros family now knows all the folderol and fiddly-dee that surrounded this trade, and the fact that he is now looked at as a franchise player here for Philadelphia, if not a savior, kind of puts him back in the driver's seat in the negotiation stand.
I think they will make him happy. I said to John Brogan, who's assistant to Jay Snyder, I said, well, now that he knows how important he is, the bargaining ought to be wonderful. You know, saying it facetiously. He says, we'll have him signed within a week. And he said it with a smile. So after making that investment, Jody, I can't believe they let him get away or have any difficulty there. They want him to be a happy camper, number 88 at center ice. Jody, hey, I don't know, nobody's asked you this. I wonder, as a Ranger fan, I mean, let's face that. You can't change an allegiance in a year that's been bred over all those years. When you listen to the rationale of the lawyer, did you say, okay, I understand, that's fair?
There was only one point, and I can't even remember, Gina, you try and reach back into your memory. I was sitting with Tony Bruno in my office listening to the dissertation, and at one point it sounded like he could potentially be going to the Rangers, but as he got further and further into his explanation of what actually transpired, it became apparent that he was going to go to the Flyers, and I thought all along that he was going to be a member of the Philadelphia Flyers, being the son of a general manager and trying to comprehend and understand when a deal is a deal. If everyone was acting above board on the Philadelphia end and was telling us the truth through the media reports, that the deal was done. And I thought that he would be a Flyer, and that's the way that it worked out. I always held off on saying whether it would be a good deal for the Rangers or a good deal for the Flyers or a bad deal for the Rangers or a bad deal for the Flyers until after the players were announced. And now that the Flyer end of it has been announced, I think they made a fabulous trade.
let me ask you this. Did you get the same sense I did throughout, that not only being a lawyer and coming up with who is and who isn't, but it seemed clearly that he wanted to go with the high road, that he made it clear that the Rangers had a deal, but too late, that Neil Smith, Mr. Jaffe dealt in high ethics, as did the Flyers, and then pointing to Quebec saying, and you notice he used it 3 or 4 times during his 20-minute speech, all Quebec was trying to do was at the top of its game get the best deal for its team and its city. And I thought he reached the high ground by not casting blame on anyone or saying Quebec was at fault or this person did something unethical. And let's work it out now, and if there's any problem in this extra draft player to be decided between the Nordiques and Philadelphia, I'm at hand to step in if they need it. So again, it was on the high ground, and I hope that the cats and dogs business of this is over.
Whether it should have or shouldn't have been is certainly debatable. He chose to try and get everyone out without casting aspersions, as you say, and I think that that's good because this has been a public relations nightmare for the National Hockey League in general, and the more you can smooth the rough edges, the better for the National Hockey League. You'd have to get inside Mr. Bertuzzi's head to decide whether he did so because he wanted to act in good conscience for the National Hockey League, or if, as he stated today, that's exactly the way he saw it, that there was no double dealings, that there wasn't unfair bidding and upping the ante done by Marcel Abou. We can only take Mr. Bertuzzi's word at what it was, that he felt that it was just good negotiation stances that went on, and the meeting was there of the minds between Quebec and Philadelphia, and that's why that deal had to be enforced.
Jody, we're going to hear a lot from Jay and Ed Snyder, and of course Farwell and Ron Reiners, the Flyers executive vice president, and they'll clarify a lot of things about Lindros. But I'm going to ask you that question I did a while back and get your review. How would you like to be Lou Lamoriello sitting now in his office at the Meadowlands with the New Jersey Devils, knowing that if he looks east 4 miles, there's Mark Messier playing at Madison Square Garden. If he gets his telescope out and looks 100 miles to the west, he sees Mario Lemieux, Yager, and Stevens in Pittsburgh. And now when he looks 70 miles to the south, there is Eric Lindros. It would be, in my mind, as Matt Dillon used to say at the beginning of his show, Gunsmoke, it makes a man watchful and a little lonely.
2 ways you can look at it from Lamoriello's stance. Number one is just purely economics. It's funny enough that the sellout at the Jersey Meadowlands is 19,040 or 1940, which is, of course, the rub of salt in the wounds to any New York Ranger fans, and he always gets that when the Rangers come in for a big game. With the fact that Pittsburgh has now won 2 Stanley Cups, with the fact that the Flyers have this high-ticketed player, Eric Lindros, who's going to be the next superstar in the league, I think he's hoping to see that 1940 number a little bit more often in his building, which can only help. As far as competition goes, the competition just got greater in the Patrick division, and Mr. Lamoriello has his work cut out for him.
But how about that when you talk about the present and future stars of this league? The Patrick division now is Stevens, Yager, Barrasso. They've got Lemieux, Messier, Amonte, Leach, Richter, and now Lindros. Certainly make the sextet of the Patrick division look pretty good.
Gene, I've been saying all year long that the Patrick division is the best division, not in hockey, in sports. Take football, take basketball, take baseball, take them all from top to bottom. The talent level in the Patrick division of both the players and the teams is the best in sports in general, and I think it only increased itself today with the addition of Eric Lindros to the Flyers.
I look at John Blackwell, who's the Flyers' assistant general manager. You know, used to be at Edmonton with Glenn Sather. And when I said, what do you think? And he just had a big smile on. He says, we had a guy where I used to be, like this kid's going to be. I just see Uncle, Tom Bigby was here. We now see Carl Hirsch, who's the president of the Spectrum, coming in. Of course, he's going to be gratified by all of this. But everybody's starting to take Lindy Snyder, Ed Snyder's daughter, and Jay Snyder's sister, who works in marketing the building, has come in. Jill Vogel, now the Flyers' assistant PR director, is looking out through doors. Is everybody ready? So my assumption is, with the lights on and cameras up and the door leading into the ovations from the rear corridor, that the Flyers' front office is ready to make its appearance. And again, Ed Snyder is here. I saw him. Russ Farwell is here. Jay Snyder is here. We just talked with Sylvan Tobin, one of the minority owners, and of course Russ Farwell, and all feel vindicated. And earlier on, Jay, I saw Ed, and knowing how his temperament is, I said, the key for you, I'm sure, is that your integrity has been verified. He says, that's it, Gene, that's number one. And he meant it, and he's delighted. And the other thing I think earlier on is that Jay Snyder's taken so much heat over the last several years about the demise of the Flyers and Clark being a rich kid, and you get overtones in the last several weeks, and I know you've had calls like that, praising him, saying even if he didn't get Lindros, he tried better than any owner in the town to improve the team, and now his stock has to go up 1,000% with this big kid coming in.
And you're only as good as your last deal, and now Jay Snyder's got his work cut out for him because they do become a little weaker on defense with the trade. They certainly have to get an experienced NHL goaltender to now back up Roussel with Hextall being gone in the trade. Today is a momentous day in Flyer history, but it's just the beginning of the rebuilding of the Philadelphia Flyers. There's still some work to be done.
But if I said to you, Jody, you and I are the general managers of the team, and we're starting with Lindros, Recchi, Boyven, Brindamore, the defense, and Roussel, you wouldn't feel too bad.
No, and let us not forget Kevin Dineen, who played as well as he did under his father last year. I know his name never really was prevalent in the discussion, but he had a dynamite year. He played as well as any Flyer, I would go as far as to say, last season, and I certainly think that is another guy to start that second line with. Not a bad start right there with the kind of season he comes off.
Now let's talk about the kicker. We mentioned the players who are involved in the trade to Quebec. One of them, Ron Hextall, has refused to talk to the media, and it was clearly stated by his agent in this previous week that with his family and at his age, he would not go to Quebec. So let's take a scenario there. Now Quebec might have another player who doesn't want to play there, but I think they would have a much better opening with Hextall, because I know there's a coach or a general manager in the league that love to have him, and Quebec might be forced to move him to Chicago, maybe for Ed Belfour, who's never been, believe it or not, despite his record in his rookie year and his Vezina Trophy, a favorite of the former Flyer coach.
And now he's the former Flyer coach, former Blackhawk coach, and general manager of the Blackhawks. You're referring to Mike Keenan.
Yes.
Gene, we hypothesize so much and speculate here on All Sports Radio. Why don't we continue to do so? With the fact that the 92 draft pick could not be included, and that they will take 18 days for the Flyers in Quebec to negotiate in good faith on what should be put in place of that 92 draft pick. If not, it will go back to the arbitrator. Take a couple of guesses at it as to what could possibly be a compromise between these two teams to compensate for that 92 pick.
All right, what Quebec's going to point out is they missed number 7 overall, which is a very, very high pick. The arbiter said, at least on the statement today, that the player upon which they decide should not be from this draft or a current player on the Flyers roster, which indicates, obviously, that it has to be somebody who will be drafted in the future. So, you can't say, well, we'll give you our number 1 next year. Quebec says, suppose you wind up with one of the better records in the league and the pick is 18th. That's not fair value. So I think if they go to a draft pick in the future, Jody, they'll have to have some compromises you've seen in deals. You give us a choice of the 93, 94, 95 pick, and we'll have the option, a month before the draft to say we'll take it in 93 or we refuse it in order to get the best opportunity. Now, it may be, he said the player should not come from the current roster or from the draft, but if Quebec and Philadelphia can come to an agreement with a current player, I'm sure that the arbiter would not stand in the way, because his main interest is that both teams in the selection of this extra player missed because of the 92 draft pick that was overlooked, should be in accord with both, and if they're in accord, then he's happy.
Do you think that the factor that some people believe that the 93 draft could be better than the 92 draft will weigh into it all, that the Flyers might not want to give up a 93 draft because you have to weigh in strength of draft as to what the number 7 player's value is this year as to compared to the number 7 or 10 or 5 or 20 in next year's draft?
Of course, you would think that if they couldn't come to an agreement, say, next year because the Flyers felt that they might have a high pick, then the arbiter would step in and say, hey, Quebec, and I think his point was that player should be not too far in the future, because Quebec should have some access to that player as soon as possible. And if you came to the 93 draft, then I think that they would come to an accord. Flyers would hope that they would be much better and that pick wouldn't be as low as 7, but that would be a crapshoot again, as it always is.
Gene, with the fact that Steve Duchesne is included in the deal, and he's a free agent and can potentially move to another team and needs to be signed by the Nordiques, do you think that's going to be a problem? I know he's French-Canadian as well, and I don't know if he's been quoted at all about whether he would or want to go to Quebec Does he have any desire or non-desire to play in Quebec, and will it just be whether he wants to come to a money contract with them?
I think he'd be happy if he got the right money, because as a free agent he was looking for $1 million plus, and I'm sure that's why the Flyers got him involved and are not that unhappy that he's going. But with the $15 to $20 million which Quebec picks up in the trade, I think they have a few bucks to spend.
Gene, you and I semi-discussed this before about the Rangers' end of the deal. We both agreed that I'm sure the New York Rangers will try and keep the players unmentioned so that these individuals can come back to the Rangers and not know whether they were or weren't a Quebec Nordique property for a short period of time, or in limbo at least. Do you think there's a chance that it will somehow leak out, though? There were certain individuals in those proceedings, like Lou Lamoriello, let's say, who is the general manager of the Devils, who might have been privy to the players that the Rangers put into the deal, the proposed deal. Do you think that it ever will come out that the Rangers players included in the deal will hit the media?
Well, you know, there's been a lot of many opportunities in the past where two teams are involved in a trade, three teams, and you never really know the players involved with the two teams who missed out. I think that'll be the occasion here. And Jody, as far as, you know,